So, good evening, friends, and good evening, people who are all joining us. So, today we'll be starting with this webinar on space opportunities and education in India. Right. So, we have our two panelists right now with us, Jay Kamdar and Miss Shreya, and we were expecting one more of our panelists to join in very soon. So, before we start, I'd just like you guys to introduce yourself to the spectators and the people who are joining us right now. So I would like Jay Kanda to start first.
All right. Am I audible? I'm audible, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely audible.
All right. So, hello everyone on with us on the this live stream. I'm Jay Kamdar. I'm studying my currently in my third year of Triple E in VIT, and I'm also the executive director of SETS India. Um, Basically, I've been practicing rocketry since quite a few years, and STAR has provided me a platform to turn it into a professional career later on, maybe. And I intend to pursue aerospace engineering in the future. So that's about me.
Okay, Shreya.
Hello everyone, good evening. I am Shreya Baran. I am currently pursuing aerospace engineering from SRM University, and I'm in my final year right now. And I'm planning to pursue my career by achieving master's degree. For further, I'm planning for next fall, I presume. And I've also been a lot interested in space studies and exploration since like many years before my BTech degree. Yeah, so that's
Okay, that's quite good. And Nitish, if you're audible to you, hello.
I mean, it's a large student-run organization which basically has chapters all across the world. So that's there, and I am also the Indian representative for SEDS Earth, which is a global forum for all the SEDS nations to interact and inform. So I also have a podcast of my own. So I am the founder and host of Unbounded, which is the startup podcast, and I am currently focusing on space entrepreneurship because I'm very passionate about it, and I am currently connected very well with new space sector as well, especially in India. So that's there. uh, yeah, so thank you for having me. And I worked with Team Indus, and I still do. I work on an experimental lunar payload there. I had a team there, so that's about me.
So we have the quite strong introduction about all the panelists. I hope now all the spectators and all the people joining us today this evening are now knowing the panelists very good. So a quick introduction about myself. Myself, Deepak Kumar. I am currently a physics Q&A expert at study.com. And before this, I worked at Space Technology and Aeronautical Rocketry as a propulsion engineer. And apart from this, I'm currently a third year student at SVNIT Physics Department. And that will be all. So now we'll just go into the questions for that all that we received on the social media platforms, and few of them questions that we got. Starting with the very first question, like before we get into the space education and the opportunity that we have in India, I would like to first ask a question from Nitesh. Like, why do we feel that the space exploration is actually needed? Like, what's the whole point of having space explorations?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. If I have to say, I mean, my take on the need for space exploration is, I mean, we have to really stop looking at space exploration as something that's unrequired. People often put this view forward that there are a lot of social issues already going on around the world, and why is it that we have to spend tons and tons of crores to do some to make, I mean, try and do something which is out of the world itself, which is basically not going to help all these problems in any way. But what people often fail to see is the fact that space in so many ways has improved the daily lives of so many people that the entire quality of and standard of people living across the world has improved. We have GPS now, and we have GMAPs, and all that is because of satellites, and all that is because of space. And uh, there is telemedicine, which is an entire wonderful concept that has been developed due to space. And we have internet all across the world, which is basically connecting everybody with everybody. It is connecting organizations across the world. I mean, without internet and without all these activities, we wouldn't be able to at least do this webinar, leave alone do anything else at all. So all this has its roots deep within, engraved in space itself. So if people are going to ask really the question as to why space exploration is required, or why these space activities are required, then they themselves have to go back again and take a step back and wonder as to how they are able to live the life that they are living today without space. So that would be my take.
Okay, and Shreya, what do you think about space exploration? Space exploration, like why do we actually need it?
Yeah, I actually like fully agree with what he said. Like, it's not only like we have known since like ages that how we have made, how we are made, how the origin was from what, how humans and all the civilization was developed, and not only for that, but one second, yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you're absolutely audible.
Yeah, and also you've known the recent news that how the asteroids and comets are like revolving around everywhere, and how like knowing the education, like knowing about the whereabouts the everything, we can also save our tiny little Earth.
Okay, and Mr. Jay.
We can.
No, Jay, you're not audible.
Jay, you are not audible. Um, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are
Yeah,
audible.
yeah, perfect. Good going. Yeah,
Sorry. Okay.
please speak ahead.
So when we talk about space exploration, my perspective is a little bit more unique. Like I see it as a way for like this is how mankind progresses. We have always come from the Stone Ages, and we have grown to the Iron Age and the Metal Age, and then we here we are right now. We can reach the moon. We can possibly reach Mars very soon. So we just need to keep on going, keep on moving forward, with the main objective to ensure the survival of mankind. That is what any civilization would do. So that's my main take on this. So space exploration is a very, very crucial factor right now, and one of the most important in the field of science and technology, because it helps us in many, many different ways. Take it as communication, or maybe exploration, or finding the answers of how we were created or how we came into
So
existence.
I think I would like to
Okay.
add on to that by quoting Carl Sagan here. He said basically, yeah, civilizations either become spacefaring or extinct. So I think that's a wonderful answer to that question
Yes.
directly.
Okay.
He also said that a baby that is born doesn't stay in the cradle forever. It has to move out someday. So Earth
Exactly.
being a cradle, we need to move out and explore further places someday.
The mankind was born on Earth, but it was not meant to die on Earth, as far as I can recall it from a
Yes,
movie.
exactly.
Okay. All right. So, moving on to the next question. Actually, this question is it states that people believe that one should not invest money and time for space when we have a lot of problem on Earth, right? Instead of using all that money for removing problems that we have on Earth, what's the whole point of spending that money for the space exploration? Like, it's quite the same question, I guess.
Yeah, it is again
So,
actually back to square one if we look at it from one perspective. I think all of us answered the exact, gave the answers for the exact same
yeah,
question right now as to why it is actually required, as opposed to saying that we have to put space second over our social issues itself. So yeah.
all right. So now that all of you have been working in the field of space education and the space sector, like the next question is something in that direction. Like, what is the role of space education in development of space industry in any country? Like, I would like to hear it first from Jack Amdar.
All right. So space education is it plays a very crucial role in developing the sense of like significance of what space science and technology actually means to any nation or as a mankind as a whole. Because every kid, we don't have, I don't think we have in India space science and space science and technology integrated in our school curriculums, like not to the extent that we should have it. So that's why space education by firms like Star and like SETS is very plays a very crucial role in development of young minds. So we will be soon seeing in future that the demand for more and more engineers in the this sector. So we need to prepare the students for this thing. So that's why it plays a very
Yeah,
crucial
it's
role.
very well
And
said.
yes,
Yeah, please continue on.
no, that's it. I would like
Okay, fine.
to hear Nitishan's
Uh,
opinion on this.
Oh,
okay,
uh,
Ritesh.
cool. So my take on it would be, I mean, it's actually quite interesting when we look at that whole thing itself. To answer that question exactly, I think it's better if we start right from the roots as to why this question itself is very important. At the end of the day, what really matters for any country is how powerful it is and how stable their economy is. And for that, you ultimately would require a proper, stable nation with proper armed and security forces. But now, when you look at it, America has developed its own space force. I mean, who would have thought they would go ahead and militarize space? So, as strong as a nation can become, their entire economy becomes stable and it gets flourished. It's one way or the other related to the stability of the nation and the entire economy itself. So at the end of the day, if really look at improving people's life, then it ultimately means that you need to improve the GDP of your country, and so that everybody's life is better, improved in one way or the other. So to do that, you obviously need a very strong foundation with respect to space, and that can happen only through generations. It's not something which you can do like in 5 to 10 years itself. So in order to foster that, we do have a very solid space agency as of now, but space education, when you look at it, it's not entirely something that India has been focusing on until now. So if you can somehow find a way to impart that, okay, there is this concept of space and this is going to help whole of humanity in such ways, and this is what you can do. If people can just know all these facts right from a young age, and have a look at it and consider that as a potential a job space or a potential field to explore and contribute to all of humanity itself, I think it will be uh, beneficial for the entire country itself when you consider the long run. So that would mean that the advancements for the country with respect to space is going to improve in the future, which ultimately leads to a more see the entire strength of the country is right now, the trend is like your strength of the space force which you have, or your space agency strength. It's been looked like that. So if at all India is going to have such a powerful space agency and has its say over space, the future is space. So if we have a very good say over space in the coming time itself, then it means that we do have a say over major decisions that the world economy is gonna it's gonna roll over. So I think putting that perspective forward, that is one of the reason as to why space should be given priority. Space education should be given priority, and it is not something that's there is this often very great proverbial or bigger proverbial claiming something space is always like a rocket science. So that is wrong as well. There are tons and tons of ways to actually learn about space. There's astrophysics, if you can learn, and that's the science part of it as well. That's fun. I'm not saying that those are relatively easy or difficult to study, but you have to break all that myth and try to explore that field to actually know what is lying and what that sector has to offer. So if that can be achieved, I mean, that can be achieved, then it means that the entire country is going to get benefited in the long run. Mind you, it's in the long run, not instantaneously. So often what people think of, and often what people mistake is the fact that they require or they expect very short term results, and if they're not going to be patient enough, then space is probably not the sector for them. But to succeed in anything, it is essential that we play the long game, and for that, you need to have a space policy. You need to focus on space education, and I think anybody in their right minds, if they can properly think about playing in the long run, and if they can probably have some knowledge with respect to how much space can help, would focus on improving space education in any country for that matter, not just in India.
Okay. So all right. So keeping space education apart, like how many of you, just this is just a random question, I'm just asking it. How many of you have heard of the simulator or the game called Kerbal Space Program? I'm just asking
Yes,
this.
I have
Um,
played it quite
no, I
quite
am
a
not
lot.
able to hear you. Kerbal, what?
Kerbal
Kerbal
Space
Space
Program.
Program, KSP.
No, I haven't
Okay,
heard.
Okay, fine. So
I do not know much about it. Yeah.
all right. So since Jay has already played that game, he knows about the game. Um, this
Yes.
might sound nonsense, but okay, I'm just asking it. How uh, how uh, how efficient do you think that KSP would be when it comes to the role of space education? Just
KSP is it's kind of an unique opportunity, like because it combines gaming as well as space education, and
Mhm.
many almost every student here likes gaming. Like gaming is kind of fun and relaxing. So this is a very cool way to get educated in space science and technology, because some almost all the scientific parameters used in KSP are pretty accurate, and like they introduce us to actual space flight and technology.
All right. So we are actually getting quite hypes in the WhatsApp chat. People are actually getting triggered with by hearing KSP here. So now we'll be moving on to the next question.
Yes.
So when there is initially a individual who aspires to set up to be a space pioneer in the country, what all types of challenges would he or she might be facing, as per you? Like since you are all in this sector, so it would be better to hear from you. So I'd like to start with Ms. Shreya.
Yeah, I think the first aspect, like what we majorly need is funding. Like, as like coming from a small family or anyone, like for developing a space industry, like we need will need a huge amount of money required. So for that, like firstly, we'll need a good amount of funding or a company who can support us, and the other is like a proper team. And to find a team like Sunny sir, it's difficult. Like it is very difficult to find people of group like who can develop and like who has such amount of talent with them.
And Jay, what's your take on that?
Talking specifically about our nation, as Shreya said, first of all, we need funding. We will need a kind of a network that or network of investors who can actually see what we are actually working for, and they can understand the significance of what we are working for. Secondly, we need laws. We badly need laws. There are many project teams I know who want to start rocketry, but it's kind of not legal right now due to military issues and stuff like that. So we need properly defined laws that can help guide project students as well as startup companies to know which direction to approach. Basically, there's little to no support from government for space startups. So that's still an issue that we need to work on, and that is one of the major problems that a space pioneer will face in their journey.
Okay. So I see because things here in India are, with the perspective of space education and practicing rocketry is quite different as compared to US, right? So
Very different, yes.
that's where we are facing all these kind of problems. And
Yes.
all right. So Nitish, would you like to speak something upon this?
Yeah, I think I agree with both of them basically. But if I may add on to Jay's point, I think more than laws, what we should actually focus on right now, I mean, the entire government is actually creating a space policy first up, which would again, encapsulate basically forming of laws relating to
Yes, the
space. So,
same one
yeah,
same.
so the
Yes.
space policy is basically the government or the political framework, which basically dictates how the people who have the money to actually invest into space, speaking strictly in terms of the government people alone, how that entire process happens. So you need to first have a process as to how you entirely get this space projects funded, or what to do with respect to the bandwidth that is being allocated for various companies, for various startups, and for various students. So if that can be clearly established at first and brought in to the entire new space scenario, then I think space laws will eventually follow. And many startups right now who I know, I mean, and the people who I have interacted with, their major complaint is because India does not have a very defined space policy as of now. But when you look at US, Trump's administration has been entirely focused, at least 30 to 40% of their entire administration has been focused to creating a proper space policy, and US has a space policy as of now. But we do not have one such thing. So if I have to give one such example as to why a space policy is really required, take for example a company which is playing around with satellites, say geospatial imaging, and they just basically would like to make money by just selling images or giving other people data who actually require the data. So if you want to, as an entrepreneur in India, if you're really looking to start a company which basically deals with all that activities, then what you really need is you specifically require a bandwidth using which you can process all that data, and you can you put your microsat in Leo or Geo or whatever orbit you like, and then gather data. So that's there. But in order to simply know what bandwidth is available for your satellite to do all these works, or in order to at least to get clarified as to what is defense, what bandwidth is used for defense, and what bandwidth is used for strategic purposes for the country, and what bandwidth is used for commercial use. That itself is taking 1 year, 1.5 years for companies to figure out. So if you're going to give that much of a leeway for companies to simply start off with a brilliant idea like that, then how are you encouraging space entrepreneurship in any way at all? So that is one major area where India must focus in terms of creating a space policy. So if at all, I mean, there are a lot of micro satellite investors, I mean, players right around in the country who are actually willing to put in so much money. And one of the major problems which all the entrepreneurs are facing right now is, of course, as Shreya said, it's funding right first. But when you have a clearly defined space policy, then I think the investor mindset will also change, because they wouldn't be taking any sort of risks, or they're not basically pulling on something that's coming out of a Pandora's box. It's as clear as it gets if a space policy is properly mentioned. So having a space policy would mean that the entire industry is going to flourish, plus the entire problem of funding could be tackled up to an extent. So that is one of my views. And I would also like to add upon to Jay's point, which is the formation of a proper network. See, I know tons and tons of people. I personally know tons and tons of people who are actually interested to do work with the satellite, do work with a rocketry, or something of that sort itself, but they actually don't know who to approach or what to do and where to begin itself. But that's not the same. That's not the same with other industries. If we look at specifically India, so reaching out to a network itself is a very, very big task when it comes to especially space in our country. So if you have the network, you obviously know the people and you can get the work done, be it however complex the work is. So having a right network of students, professionals, and investors who can probably help you in the long run with whatever idea you have, I think that also matters. So those are a few of the major problems which the country is facing with respect to space entrepreneurship.
Okay, like I won't say that space, there is no atmosphere of space education in our India, because you see, for the past few years, STAR has been conducting CANSAT events and the rocketry events, right? I am sure you must have heard of it, right? So my just a small question about this, like how do you think like the model rocketry and CANSATs help in enhancing the technical skills and the non-technical skills as well? Shreya.
Yeah, like we know that we obviously can't go to a major space industry and work there itself, obviously. So like we have to like try on making things by ourselves, or through such group, or somewhere where we can go and like experiment by hands-on. We can get on hands-on experience by itself, so that like we'll get to know what the parts are, how the working is done, and how the like Gansett is basically a small miniaturized structure where we can, in a small soda can type of thing. So we
Yeah.
can like make from that, and like we can experiment with ourselves, and we can try new things on itself. Like we'll get to know what is happening, and on even like technically and also and non-technically we can also develop our own skills together by working skills.
I'm sorry, I guess Jay's network is wasn't good. Okay, fine. Like I would add to this, like the best part about having CANSATs and rocketry workshops is that firstly it will help establish the atmosphere of space education. Like at least students and the people or the individuals who are working on it, they'll get a real good hands-on experience, and they'll have exposure to what actually the bigger version of this could be. They can have at least an idea of this, right? So, Nitish, what are your points? What are your views
Yeah,
on it?
cool. So let's be very honest here. The most jugaad and easy way to learn something which is as complex as rocket science, or which is as complex as a project, is get your hands dirty in the first attempt itself. You just can't keep reading stuff and then
Exactly.
trying to figure out everything. So once you get
That's
into a
one way to
project
do
and start working, you can eventually start figuring things out. I think that is how major space players here work. Most of the startups and the people have actually begun that, and most of the projects which people are doing, they did not initially have previous exposure, working with stuff like that. So they just eventually got that
it.
idea and they said, okay, I have a specified timeline right now, and let me start working and see where it goes. So, and that is how people have progressed so far. And it is, it is actually quite surprising how much you can learn eventually on the go itself when you try a project, irrespective of how complex it may seem at first. I have experienced that. I'm sure all of you must have experienced that. So if I were to give
Yes.
just one advice or one point to everybody right there, grab every opportunity which you can get. If you can get your hands dirty with a project, no matter how complex or how simple it is, ranging right from a CANSAT to a module rocket. So I think anything should do great. And of course, as Shreya said, it also helps nurture the soft skills which we may or may not have. Speaking about teamwork, leadership, and how to get the logistics done. So all that also plays a very huge role, especially when you're trying to get a real life, hardware work done, as opposed to just something which you code. So yeah.
Okay, and so Jay, like, what's your take on this? I just like to have an opinion from you.
I think Nitish and Shreya covered almost all points, but I would like to say, like,
Okay.
seeing it from, I talked to a few engineers from companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, and they follow a very, very similar format. So rockets and working on rockets and CANsets gives us idea to the approach, and it just removes out the awkwardness between an employee and the employer. So I would like to make it more sensible. So I'll say just that my experience in Star. So what the approach that we use is we departmentalize. We first fixed an objective that we want to make a rocket that reaches up to 200 meters, say example. So we departmentalize it and we work accordingly. And one of the major factors here is there should be smooth functioning between each and every department. Like there should be proper collaboration and cooperation between all departments. So this is exactly what is also needed and seen in big companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. There are millions of departments there. Like for every single
Yeah.
screw you fit, there is a different department for it. Kind of like that. I'm just saying. So that is what we learn while we do rockets and CANsets as a project here, and that's how space education comes into its significance.
When it comes to space education, I can't think anything other than Kerbal Space Program. Honestly speaking.
Mhm. It's really great. I understand.
Yeah.
One of the
Okay.
greatest creation.
So, like, I've heard about SEDS, SEDS,
Yes.
and I'm sure all of you might be knowing about it. So, I would first like to hear about it from Jay. Like, what is it actually, and what activities do they do under it?
Oh, I'll start with how I came to know about SEDS. Before coming to college, I was practicing rocketry since like 4 to 5 years before, starting from my eighth grade. So I always wanted to go to a college which is an active space club or chapter. That's how I
Oh,
came to know about
just
SEDS.
excuse me. Yeah,
Yes.
could you please elaborate like your experience with rocketry for the last since eighth or ninth standard that you told me about? If you could
Okay.
just talk about it.
Yes, it's been kind of a childhood dream, and one of my high school teachers just inspired me to just like go for it. I always had made elaborate plans to make a rocket and make missiles and stuff like that. But then my teacher told me just do it once and just see what happens. So that's how I started in my eighth grade. I made an amateur rocket. Of course, it blasted in midair and it was a disaster. But that's how my journey started with rocketry. And over the years, till my 12th grade, I made numerous rockets and tried out new things. It's a step by step process. So we start with fuel making first, we perfect it.
Okay.
After that, we go for a perfect rocket body that is aerodynamic and can work with a stable flight. So it's a step by step process. So that's how I implemented it. But once I came to college, I realized that it was not legal. I was lucky that the police didn't catch me while I was launching the rockets all this while. So
Because
that
as
that
long
was
as
my journey.
it's not legal, it's probably not a rocket. Then it's a missile.
Yes, that's how the Indian government sees it as, because if any flying object that has a propulsive devices goes above 100 to 200 meters, it is considered to be a threat.
Yes.
That's how the law dictates it.
Okay.
So
So,
about SEDS, coming back to SEDS. So
yeah.
in my first year itself, I inquired around. I found many seniors who were a part of SEDS. SEDS actually stands for Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. So that says everything about it. It's basically the exact thing that I wanted in college. So that's how my journey started. I was an active member in outreach as well as the core department. And in outreach, our main role was to impart space education to school children nearby who don't have any access to it in school. So they didn't learn any of these things about space in school. And we went there and we presented several topics ranging from black holes to rocketry and everything else. We covered
So
every single
basically, they
part.
covered the whole space education.
Yes, exactly. That was our
Okay.
main objective to impart space education. And as a
All
part
right.
of SEDS India, it has been to be honest, it has been a really great opportunity for my career and my future as well, because I got to know many great people like Nitish and people from SEDS USA, SEDS UK, and it just formed an international network, and I got to know more about colleges and master's programs going on abroad. And there were several opportunities. I cannot properly list them all here right now, but it was just an amazing opportunity. So for everyone out there, I would like you all to become a part of SEDS or any other space club that can enhance your career and like put your dreams in a practical purpose.
All right. To the viewers who are still joining us, I'd just like to know that, guys, we have got you covered, because if you are interested in aerospace departments and you just want to explore the whole world of rocketry, today these three panelists have got you covered. All right. So coming on to the next question. Next question is for Shreya. So Shreya, just tell me, like, what are the main concerns for a private company that are actually venturing out into space technology and research in India?
Um, Actually, like regarding the private companies and startup and everything, I'm not into that much right now, so
Okay,
I
okay, fine.
might not be the right person.
Okay, fine. So Nitish, I guess you raised your hand. What's your take on
Oh,
this?
okay. I'm not sure if I raise my hand, but of course, I would like to add on to that question. So, see,
Okay.
again, it boils down to the space policy which we have, the kind of opportunities which is being offered, and where people play around, and the investor circuit which is going on throughout India. So right now, say for example, if I wanted to have a startup of my own, if your question is what kind of problems I would be essentially facing, number one is of course building a proper team. Let's say the money and all that comes later. So in a country like us where uh, people who are inclined to space either would want to work for only major organizations like ISRO and DRDO and Aeronautical Development Agency and so on, people often tend to put just one eye towards working in a startup, but that is the best place to learn. I mean, I've experienced it
Exactly.
even
Hmm.
while studying itself. So people really underestimate the power of startups and the kind of vibe and atmosphere that just goes around there. So building a proper team is a major issue simply because people's mindsets are not perfectly oriented towards these kind of startup opportunities as well, I'd say. So if I mean my essential go through strategy would be to approach networks like SEDS and approach somebody's networks like Star and see if somebody's interested to get in. Now that is one way, but another problem there is most people do not even know about SEDS and know about Star and the kind of network they have and the kind of opportunities which they can offer. So again, there's the problem of networking. So even if I were to become, I mean, have a startup of my own, it is absolutely imperative that I need to be connected properly within the country. I need to be at least connected to a lot of people who are into this domain so that I can, tap out of all the wisdom which they have to offer. Because let's be honest here, it's one of the most lacking things in our country right now. Wisdom,
Exactly.
especially concerning this entire startup space department. So that is another problem for me. No, so when okay, let's assume that you have a team itself. I mean, of course, all this I'm saying with the assumption that you have a very defined problem statement and you have a viable business model, and then you've done, I mean, dived into getting or forming an organization itself. So if at all you have all those boxes checked, your next step would be to go look for funding. So again, there are a handful of investors who are actually looking to invest in space segment, especially with the absence of the space policy here in India. Say for example, there is Pi investors and there is special investors. I think those are the only people with probably more 5 or 6 more investors who are actually looking to invest into space sector. And when I've spoken with them, they themselves honestly said, see, we're also taking a bet here. We ourselves are not sure if their ideas are amazing and your business model is viable, but we do not have a space policy as of now. So whatever money we are giving is simply a bet which we are taking and which we are willing to take. So if at all you're going to convince an investor to invest, say, 25, 30 crores, say, for example, you wanted that money for pre-series or Series A or Series B or something of that sort. So even to get that pre-series funding right from an investor, you need to, I mean, who is essentially taking a bet when they are investing in your space startup, then think of how much of a solid problem statement which I mean you would have to handle, and how much of a proper business model you have to create. So that process itself is going to take me at least 2 to 3 years in this country. So I have to at least I have to be clear 100% on paper, not just 100%, 200% on paper before I even go talk to an investor. Otherwise my answer is going to be a very big no. So
Okay, fine.
that yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that would be my other problem, which is connecting with the proper investor circuit. And I know there are a handful of startups which have succeeded way greatly with respect to space in India. To say, for example, there's Nopo Nanotechnologies, and they have a working MOU with Lockheed Martin in the US right now, and they are America's primary defense contractor, and they are contracting directly with Nopo Nanotechnologies. But that guy, it took 11 years for him to simply register his company as a space startup in this country. And who would be willing to spend 11 years just sitting quietly and doing stuff on paper without having any proper sense of knowledge that you would be gaining any money in the future at all. So that again, then there is another problem, that the people who are going to look forward to creating a proper space enterprise in this country very easily could give up. Not everybody who wants to become a space entrepreneur will eventually end up becoming one. They just pivot or they just quit right there in the middle and they just move it, because there is so much difficulty even just to put your first foot forward. So I think people really underestimate what it takes to become a space entrepreneur in this country. And all this is again one or the other way related to the entire ecosystem, which is slowly developing as of now. Having said that, it does not mean that you can't look at that as a potential field itself. You have tons and tons of opportunity coming up, and government is slowly starting to look at this side of space, which is the entrepreneurial side. And that is why we have seen the formation of Antrix by ISRO, which is the private startup wing. And we also have initiatives like Space Park Kerala, which the government of Kerala is coming up, and people are slowly throwing in money into that field. Special, I think, investors, they are primarily looking to invest in a field like space right now. I think they have managed to give 24 crores to Agnikul Cosmos for their pre-series funding. So I think that is a very good sign that things are going to improve, and that is one exciting place to be there if you are willing to be an entrepreneur.
Okay, so Jay, I would just like to ask you, like, as you told that growing up the network would be an issue here, like how you just have to look out how at different ways how you can grow up your network, right?
Yes.
So apart from this, like regarding all the other problems, how do you think like government of India would uh, would be supportive here, or what support do you expect from government of India here?
Okay, so government can support us in many, many possible ways, which they haven't started till now. So I
Okay.
would really urge them to. So one of the possible ways is, say, ISRO can start outsourcing its components that it makes for rockets, or it can also start
Okay.
taking launch services from space startups. I think Skyroot
Yeah.
Aerospace from Hyderabad is already planning to develop their own launch vehicles. So if they are successful doing that with government support, ISRO can just focus on making satellites and payloads and leave the launch services to private space startups. This is exactly what NASA is doing right now. They
Yes.
are using the launch services of SpaceX and ULA, United Launch Alliance, which is an alliance between Boeing and Lockheed Martin. So they have been doing this for years now, and it's a very, very successful model. So if our government decides to employ this same model, it will be very beneficial, because ISRO can then focus all its attention on making orbiters and spacecrafts rather than just focusing resources on making launch vehicles and improving them. So I think currently our space startup ecosystem is pretty much capable of doing that, of developing its own launch vehicles. It might take time, sure. As Nitish said, we should have a lot of patience, and the job of a space entrepreneur is very, very tough. But it is quite possible. So with proper government support, we can get this done. Moreover, from a student perspective, as I already said, and also Nitish pointed out, we should have policies. We should encourage students. Government should encourage students to make rockets and get involved in space education. Currently, almost every single space education initiative is a private one. There's nothing from the government. ISRO is helping out in as much as possible, but there's no solid support there. There's no proper funding there. So that's how I feel that government should support the space
I would
education
like to
and
add. I would
ecosystem
like to
here.
add one small point to the NASA, the concept of NASA, how it works. Actually,
Yes,
out there in US, there are quite a large number of startups that build launch vehicles and the payloads as well, right? So NASA
correct.
comes up with a platform for for the startups that make launch vehicles and the startups that make the payloads, and they combine into one.
Yes.
That's how you get like the launch services. They get the payloads to launch, and that's actually a really an impressive cycle to see that. Right.
Yes,
Okay.
but my main point was that majority of every single NASA spacecraft, you can take any for example like the Dawn mission or the Curiosity rover, all of it
Yes.
was launched either via ULA or either via SpaceX rockets. So
Yeah.
that's what my main focus. Of course, NASA provides a platform for the payloads from other space companies to also be launched through these. But the main point was the launch service outsourcing. That was the
Yeah,
key
I get
point.
it. Okay. So now that all three of you have been working for quite a long time in the industry of space and space education, I would like to start first from Shreya. Like, what till now, what have you done in achieving the space, in achieving what all you have done till now in the industry of space education, and what are your future goals in the same?
Like coming to specifically to space exploration and the topic of space, like for the in my BTech, I first and the second year, I have I've joined a club of Mars Rudra. So basically they designed a rover for a competition in Utah. So that is basically they have a Mars similar to a
URC.
Yes, you are seeing. Similar to a Mars environment, they have a open like desert area, and there the teams come up and compete their rovers. So we designed the rover and the robotic arm, and so we have also like I've also worked in that team. And recently, I have been studying about space debris and the space environment specifically. So, like, we have come to know that as humans, we have designed and developed and we have made missions to reach space, but we haven't been aware of how much damage we are doing to our environment. Like, not only also on the Earth, but also on the space. There are more than 2 million of space debris present right now, less than 1 centimeter, and also between 1 to 10 centimeter. So even one small impact of 1 centimeter can damage your satellite system to almost it can give an explosion. So
Yeah.
it is a crucial point which has to be mentioned everywhere, and which is something to focus on right now.
All right. So, guys, now we are like almost 15 minutes left. We have to just wrap up the webinar, right? So, I'd just like a quick review. Like, I would like to have a quick opinion by Jay and Nitish about this. So, starting with Jay first.
All right. So talking about what I have done till now
Hmm.
for in this field of space education, almost all of my contribution comes from SEDS as a being an outreach member. So we have done many sessions outside, as I already described to you, like to educate young children. So currently, I would like to also take this opportunity to discuss about One Space. So SEDS India is recently coming up with the One Space initiative, where we are going to take the entire space education platform online. So whatever we were going there and teaching students, we just discovered that our reach is not as much as we want it to be. We could only attend to the local schools around the colleges. So using the online one space platform, we want to reach millions of children around in India as well as around the world. So that's what we are currently working on, and it will be live within a few months. So that is one of the major part that is going on in my life right now. Talking about the future, I'm planning to pursue masters in aerospace engineering, specifically majoring in avionics. So
Okay.
I'll soon be starting college applications. Currently I just finished my third year, and like many people don't know about the space education going on in higher space education going on in foreign countries. So like I would wish people to know more about ISU, International Space University. It's located in France, and it is a very great program. It's very difficult to get into, but still it is a very pretty great program. It covers almost every single aspect of space. Like you can learn about launch services, you can learn how the management is done, you can learn uh, how the rockets are made and how engines work. Every single aspect is covered in the programs there. So like people need to explore more about this and get to know more.
That's quite good. I'm planning to go there now. Like before
Yeah.
this, I was planning to get into TU Delft University for MS Aerospace, but fine, I'll
I'm
conclude this
also
after my 12.
it's one of my shortlisted university. TU Delft has the best aerospace program. It's the toughest one also.
Yeah,
So yes, that is possible. But usually ISU only accepts people who are already into space careers and who are well settled into it and want to progress more. So it's pretty tough to get into that ISU. So sure.
okay. Then I'm pretty much ruled out candidate in that case because I'm from physics.
No, actually, it's possible. One of my own seniors, Pranjal Samath, has made it possible. Like
Okay,
right after his BTech, he applied there because he had a very great research background. So he got into ISU.
this is
So it's
there's
not
still
like it's
some
totally
hope.
impossible.
Still some
Yes.
hope there. Yeah. All right, Nitesh, what would you like to
Okay,
add? Hmm.
cool. So if I were to add to this question, I think the question was, what have you done with respect to this industry?
Yeah, like what you have been doing, you have done till date, and what are your future
Okay,
goals in the education
all
sector?
right. All right. So to be very honest and frank, my experience with the space industry and everything is very much peanuts. So it's not too much at all. So most of which I know is comes through again SEDS. So as you know, I have I've been a part of my SEDS club at the university. So I was the head there, and I eventually got into the SEDS India staff, and I served as the executive director of SEDS India, managing around all the chapters for my last term, and for this term I got into the board. So I currently preside over as the vice chairman of SEDS India. So that I handle diplomacy between chapters within the country with respect to space, and I oversee what is happening around and everything. So I think people like Jay are they are very much of help. So that was with respect to SEDS, and I also am a member of SEDS Earth, which is a global forum wherein all the SEDS nation leaders, they come and interact, and we're trying to put up a policy as to framework as to how all these nations should work with respect to space, and how students can help it. So I currently handle international diplomacy as well for the country's SEDS, for India's SEDS. So that's there. Apart from that, I've also I also head another club called as the Aero Modeling Club in my college. So we work on
Okay.
airplanes and rovers and stuff in my college as well. So we have experience participating in the Society of Automotive Engineers SAEs competitions and stuff. So that's one side, and another is I've also worked with Team Indus, and I still do work with them. So I lead a team which is basically, we are building an experimental lunar payload to be tested on the moon surface there. So that is my work with
Okay.
respect to Team Indus as of now. So before which I was again working with Team Indus on their rover. So we had to incorporate major design changes and all that stuff with a rover which they had. So, and we actually happened to test it on their facility, which is called as the Lunar Pit. So they have a very basic
Okay.
simulated lunar soil environment. It's like an actual physical environment wherein you can put your rover and test it. The soil characteristics, the compaction factor, and the drawbar pull and the traction and everything matches with that of the lunar regolith, which is there. So it's quite a fun
Interesting.
place to be. You will have to wear your costume before you get into that space and you test your
Yeah.
rovers. So it was fun to get there and interact with all those scientists. I've I've been so lucky to that I got to meet with the director of Chandrayaan directly, and I in fact presented my work with him. He reviewed it and he criticized. So all that has been so much fun. So that is the kind of opportunity which Team Indus has brought me, and now currently I'm working with an Italian team on the lunar payload itself. So they are the science part, and we are the engineering team. We're actually building a prototype which can basically test the lunar regolith, which is the Johnson Space Center's 2A variant, JSC-2A it's called. So we're basically testing it for lunar radiation, space radiation permeability, and which essentially means we're testing it for galactic cosmic rays and SPEs and trapped radiations, of planetary radiations, and see how permeable the soil can be. So if at all our results turn out to be positive, then it means that we can potentially use the lunar regolith itself in order to construct buildings or something of that sort, if at all we plan on colonizing. So that's the whole big picture idea. Apart from that, I've also been doing another project with Team Indus. So that is like the Lab to Moon entry. Lab to Moon is like an initiative of Team Indus wherein over 3,000 teams from all across the world applied. So that is like you have to design an experiment which is like a can size thing of 250 grams. So that's your mass constraint, and you have to, if you could potentially demonstrate the use of that experiment on the lunar surface, then they'll be giving you the funds to build it and the technical support as well. So that was a team called ERS, which means Electrostatic Active Radiation Shield. I think I had that team as well. Yeah, so I do have that team as well. So what we do there is, so we have actually managed to, we are trying to test out the concept of electrostatics with respect to space radiation shielding. So it's basically,
Okay.
putting out a Van de Graaff generator and trying to create a huge positive charge sphere. As you know,
Hmm.
most of the space radiation constituents are high energy photons, basically. So,
Hmm.
which are high energy protons and alpha particles, which are positively charged. So, we very well know that like charges repel. So, if you can probably create electromagnetic sphere out of the charges, which is of high intensity and high stopping potential, that it can stop up to, say, for example, 1 to 1.5 million electron volts, MEVs. And
Hmm.
so if you can create that much of an intense field, then you can probably deflect the incoming particles at high speeds, because they at best come at around 1.3 MEVs. So that's the whole
Hmm.
concept which we are trying to create. So the whole significance of that idea is that if at all it becomes a success, then it means that we have developed the first non-physical space radiation shield there is. So every space radiation shield that we have as of now is just panels. It's just physical objects which you just keep to, stop those particles from affecting your electronics and stuff. So that again
Yeah.
accounts for your mass constraint with respect to any space problem. So again, mass is a very big deal, because that is again going to directly impact your launch costs and all that stuff, and your payload positioning and everything. So mass is entirely, it's like the number one parameter where you cannot go wrong with respect to space objects. So if at all you can bring in a non-physical space radiation shield, then just imagine how much you can focus on, improving just the tech of the experiment. You can do so much more with an experiment, because you will have so much more, mass budgeting
Hmm.
to work, because you're not, trying to utilize that for your physical shields, which is of course heavy. So I think that is another work which I've been doing. And apart from that, I also,
Okay, fine.
uh, cool. So if I can add last
I was
point,
just
yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, sure, sure, sure. Please do.
Cool, cool. So I found a company called as Unbounded right now. So it is like a podcast company. It's like a parent company of three different subsets right now. So one is the podcast, where I exactly focus on space entrepreneurship and what it takes for people. It's like the startup guide with respect to space entrepreneurship. So it's like everything combined into one. So what I do is I go out and I meet amazing people, entrepreneurs who've succeeded actually in the space ecosystem in India, and I speak with them and sit down with them and experience what they have to say. So doing that, I was so lucky to meet the director of the French Space Agency, and I even did one with him. I have an episode with the director of French Space Agency on space entrepreneurship and everything. So I was so lucky to meet him and
Wow.
do a podcast episode with him as well. So another part of Unbounded is also called as the Enigma. So where we are trying to actually develop rocketry, much like what Star has been doing so far. So I think we will have some progress on that front as well. So apart from that, I've always wanted to create a network for students who are trying to get into the field of entire space entrepreneurship thing itself, because if they have a network, then they are pretty much halfway through to whatever problem statement they're working. So as a part of Unbounded, I'm also creating a student network right now called Nexus. So that is like the ultimate student connect. It's like a contact sharing forum wherein you can basically, if one person just asks, hey, do you know somebody who can help me with this drone internship or drone company, then somebody else from another university will just give their number or something of that sort, who they have experience working with. That is how you build a contact.
So
So
that's
we are
just
trying
basically
to,
the indexing of all the people who are.
yeah, it is like that. It
Yeah.
basically works
So
like
what I'm
that.
saying
So
is
we are,
that's just.
hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, cool. So
Okay.
we have actually implemented that in 4 universities as of now, and we have plans to implement to other major players as well. So hopefully we'll be able to do it nationwide. And we have set Sri Lanka to support us. We have a tie up with them as well. So set Sri Lanka has agreed to help with formation of that network as well. So it will soon become international. It's like a contact sharing platform. So look out for Nexus if you are really into this space entrepreneurship thing. So that's one thing which I've always been passionate about, which is to teach and enable other people to know stuff which they actually wouldn't otherwise, and help them get through to their process of having their own startup. So I think that is what I've been doing until now with respect to the space domain. Yeah.
So that's a lot you all guys have been doing till date. Now, I really want to wish you best of luck for the future. May you succeed spreading the knowledge, space education, whatever, right? And now that we are running short on time, I just rolled on a question to each one of you from the comment section that we were getting while we were live. So the first question is, okay, so this question is quite simple one. I'd like to throw this question to Shreya. Just a random question. From where did you guys got the motivation to initiate the startup of space? I mean, okay, this question is not like you're not. Would you be able to answer this question?
Like, I don't know much about startup basically.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So Jay, please, Jay, take up this question, please.
I would prefer Nitish to answer because he's actually running a space startup unbounded. So Nitish, take
Okay.
it up.
So I think I
Okay,
basically
Nitish.
answered that question as well when I
Yeah,
answered the previous
exactly.
question. So much of it,
Hmm.
the entire drive comes from the fact that I also would like to help other people as much as I would like to learn with respect to, space. And it is always good to have a network and stay connected. So, no matter how much you achieve, if you're not going to be able to give back, then it's always going to feel empty. So I am very much conscious on that. So I think my entire idea of creating a space startup, it actually came from, I mean, I have surrounded with like-minded people. That's one of the most important reasons, meeting all these people for doing podcasts and entrepreneurs and what they've been doing and everything. When I get to hear what they speak, I immediately want to do it myself. I have that feeling. So when I close my eyes and just think, okay, after 5 years, do I want to be in their position? The answer is always yes. So I think that is one of the major reasons why I wanted to, have a space startup of my own.
Okay, fine. So one last question we'll be taking up from the comment section here. This question is from Mayank Jariwala. He just wants to know about the uh, ranking, or let's say just ask that where is India standing in global space race right now, and how can a private industry help to grow the space ecosystem in India? So I guess the second part of the question has pretty much been answered. So I just like to focus upon the first part of the question. So Shreya, what do you think about the global ranking of India in space race?
I think it's more of a developing. Like, I can't exactly give the number on what rank do we stand. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know for sure. But yeah, I think we are at a good pace right now, as all the government and all the private organizations are doing, and we are far way more than better than what we are coping up than past few years. Like, and even like the youth generation of right now is very much into space education and space exploration as well. So I think it might be standing at a very good place.
Okay. And now we are almost all out of questions. Just one last question for Jay. Like from my intel sources, what I am getting is uh, Jay has worked on Star Excel at Star and during the internship
Yes.
period. So I'd just like to ask you about the experience of working with Star and how how was it during your entire internship period?
Yes, working on Star Excel was like a dream coming true because since college started, I wasn't able to work on any rockets. So it was like my childhood getting refreshed. So it was pretty much fun, as well as I got to implement the engineering knowledge that I learned in college as well. So it was, I just saw that it is a platform that is everything coming together. and it was pretty much great. I was basically worked on avionics part, so I designed the launch system, that is a launch
Okay.
ignition box, which is a wirelessly controlled, so as to maintain safety measures properly. And another part that we,
Exactly.
as an avionics team, worked on was the internal avionics of the rocket, which use a BMP sensor to measure the altitude, as well as the most crucial part being
Hmm.
that para-ejection system, where as soon as the rocket started decelerating, coming back down, it should eject the parachute. So that is one of the important algorithms we worked on, and that's basically it. So it was pretty refreshing, and I would like do it again if I get the chance to do it.
So having worked with Star, you might have probably also heard of the story where once a Bluetooth module short circuits and ignites the entire rocket, and the rocket
Yes.
just goes without the recovery system on. Right.
Yes, but
All right.
this time we took care that the entire thing was autonomous. There was no ground to rocket control. It was already preset.
Hmm.
So all we needed to do
Okay.
was just switch it on and launch it. And when it comes back, we just get the data from the SD card. I understand your concern. Like
All right.
it gets difficult if there are
Yeah, yeah,
controls on ground that while the rocket is being launched.
exactly.
Yes.
So I guess that's it. We're out of questions. We've all answered almost all the questions. It was really nice to have all three of you on board. Right. It was really amazing experience. And I would like to thank our panelists, Ms. Shreya, Mr. Nitin, and Mr. Jay. Thank you for joining in and sharing your precious time with us, guys. And for all the viewers who are in still, I'd like to let you know that on Sunday we'll be live very soon. On the same time we'll be live, and the details for the next webinar will be shared very soon. All right. Thank you guys for joining in.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for giving this opportunity. It's a
We'll meet
pleasure.
very soon.
It's been
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Just take care. It's quarantine time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
All right. See you guys. Bye.